Hi, my name is Murray Wilkinson, and today I'd like to talk about one of the investment providers we use, Morningstar. Many of you might have actually heard the term Morningstar. In fact, Morningstar is a household name in the investment industry. They provide advice to institutions, financial advisors, pension funds all around the world, in fact in 27 countries. I thought I'd give you a bit of an insight into why we use them, a bit of background. Well, firstly, they started back as early as 1982, and it was founded by one person, Joe Mansueto. Joe Mansueto was actually a stock analyst working out of Chicago, and working actually out of his one-bedroom apartment in Chicago, and he actually raised $80,000 because he saw a gap in the business. And the gap that he saw was that independent research was not there. So he actually started one of the first independent research houses back then. Since then, that business, of which he still owns 55% of, has grown and grown. They manage today over $220 billion worth of client monies around the world. They're domiciled, as I said, in 27 different countries. But I'd like to talk now as to why we use them for our client monies. Well, there's some key reasons, if I might just first. Philosophically, and this is the key thing, we have to align. And our alignment is similar to Morningstar's in the sense that their attitude as investors come first. If they won't put investors into an investment unless they can see they're going to make $1 out of it. First point. If you're working in the investor first philosophy, it's always a win-win. The second thing is they take a long-term view. If they believe the business is worth holding, then essentially a hold can be a hold forever. They look at the fundamentals. Fundamentals mean the price, the numbers have to add up. There has to be what they call an economic moat. That is, a business has to have an opportunity, a certain advantage which puts it above its competition to produce long-term income streams from that type of business. They aim to minimize costs, and that's very important because one thing that we do know is that returns fluctuate, they're uncertain, but costs, well, they're current and they're ongoing, so you can keep a cap on those. They're independently minded, and that's a hard one because sometimes you've got to walk alone. When markets are bullish and they're rising fast, it's very easy to get swept up in the crowd surge of investing. You've got to be able to step aside and say, well, listen, maybe there's a better time we should be in cash, maybe we should hold back, and when markets are actually falling, maybe that's a better time to actually invest. This independently minded attitude is what's made them money over many years. To yin when others yang, to zig when others zag, to take a counter approach to what the market is doing. And they use true diversification. True diversification, and people often talk about this, what does diversification mean? Well, it's not just having a pool of assets. What you've got to have is assets that behave differently. If asset class A is falling, you want in your portfolio asset class B to actually operate in reverse, so that way your portfolio doesn't take a hit. So there's some of the characteristics in red about their principles which align with ourselves at FutureGen. But we use them for actual investment management because they're good at asset allocation. We know historically that 90% of your return from your portfolios comes out of being in the right asset class at the right time, and conversely, being out of the wrong asset class as well. So 90% of your return comes out of that asset allocation. That's all well and good, but then you've got to be able to actually build a portfolio. We call that portfolio construction. You've got to have the means to be able to execute on those ideas of how do you get that asset allocation, how will I invest in that country, how will I invest in that region, how will I invest in that sector, and how do you do it while minimizing costs, observing the fundamentals, etc. So that's why we use Morningstar Investment Management, because it does two things. It basically mitigates risk, and over the long term, it gets us better returns than working just in the market. Thanks for your time today.